Titans and Zeus. Every family has a cross to bear, and the one of the immortals was no exception. Believe it or not, Greek mythology opens with a series of father-son conflicts. The time was when our world was ruled by two supreme deities, Uranus, heaven, the paternal god, and Gaia, earth, the maternal god. Uranus was so tyrannical that Gaia was often abused. They begot 12 giants, called Titans, who dwelled on earth long before the creation of humans. The youngest yet bravest of them was Saturn. To rescue his mother from the constant abuse, Saturn rebelled against Uranus and finally replaced him as the king of the divinities. Ironically, a tyrant's fall only gave rise to another tyrant. For fear that his children might revolt against him, Saturn devoured all of them except Zeus, the youngest child, who was smuggled out by his mother Rhea and guarded by a group of soldiers. History always repeats itself. Zeus took revenge when he reached adulthood. Saturn was overthrown, and other titans were cast into Tartarus, an abyss of the underworld. Since then, a new generation of gods, who were called the Olympians, went on stage with Zeus as their leader. As the god of gods, Zeus has a tall and imposing build, a bearded and chiseled face. Being seated upon the mighty throne in heaven, with his eagle proudly perching on his shoulder, Zeus's eyes could penetrate through clouds into the soul of every creature on earth. Evils and crimes were his enemies. Upon seeing any of them, he would mete out punishment by striking a fatal blow with his thunderbolt. Just like any other deities, however, Zeus was not impeccable in his character. His infidelities were well known among the immortals and mortals, and his numerous erotic escapades were the strongest proof. They were also the reasons for the ceaseless domestic strife between him and his wife Hera. The following are two of Zeus's liaisons and Hera's intrigues in scattering them. Zeus and Io. One day, Hera was informed that her husband was flirting with a nymph. When she arrived at the scene, she discovered that the place was shrouded in heavy mist. How can mist still hover here with the sun blazing overhead? She surmised that this was nothing but her husband's cover-up of some dubious encounter. Without hesitation, she cast away the mist, and an unexpected scene came to her sight. Zeus was sitting in a leisurely manner with a heifer by the riverside. Hera pondered, "Since when does he adopt this placid disposition?" "This heifer must be the transformation of a woman," she mused. Her guess was right, and the heifer was in fact Io, the granddaughter of Neptune, the ocean god. To make sure that no other women could ever come close to her husband, she requested that the lovely animal be given to her as a present. As the mightiest god, how could he refuse such a trivial pleading of his wife? Therefore, he gave in, but privately grudged passing the heifer to her. Having got the animal, Hera placed it under the close surveillance of Argus, a 100-eyed giant who never closed all of his eyes, even though he was sound asleep. Being burnt in his passion for this mistress, Zeus ordered Mercury to save her. When Mercury reached the pasture where Io was kept, he pretended to be a shepherd and told the giant a very long story about the pipe he used. The story seemed never-ending, and Argus was finally lulled to sleep. No sooner had he closed the last of his eyes did Mercury slain him. Io was freed, but she could only regain her original shape on the condition that she would never see Zeus again. Zeus and Europa. On another day, Zeus beheld a beautiful princess called Europa. His passion again failed his rationality. To avoid being discovered by his jealous wife, he changed himself into a bull. This bull, despite its muscular back and strong limbs, was particularly gentle. It knelt before Europa, lowed softly, and nestled against her warm body. Beguiled by its seeming tameness, she mounted on the bull's back, hoping for a leisurely ride. Just after she had done so, the bull carried her away with great speed. In the meantime, Hera had already noticed such an affair and determined to lay waste to any place that Europa might go. To evade the curse, the bull and Europa travelled around the world and finally set foot in a remote continent completely unknown to Hera. A bridal chamber was then built in a secluded place on this continent, which was later named as Europe after this runaway bride.